I think the scariest part is the lack of information out in the medical community, by far. I don't think doctors are trying to be bad doctors. I think it's a fact that they're not educated about Lyme disease when they go through medical school, in a degree that is necessary. I also think there's a huge, monetary component about the disease, unfortunately, where you have people in positions of power to, influence what the guidelines are for Lyme disease that are holding patents, right? Or on advisory boards for pharmaceutical companies. And if these Lyme drugs that they're trying to develop, that they could make billions on, have to go away, right? Because Lyme could actually be treated with antibiotics, which they can't make money on anymore because they can't hold a patent on something already in existence. That to me is the scariest thing. So there's no reason for the medical community to take notice other than caring for their patients. And sometimes that's not always the priority, unfortunately, in this industry. But I think 90% of the doctors it is. But the problem is they're not getting the education about the Lyme disease because that's usually funded by the pharmaceutical companies and the medical supply companies, et cetera. So I think it's just a horrible snarl of misinformation or lack of information getting down the line to where it needs to go. I think the first thing I would do is get into the doctor's offices and do some seminars and make sure that doctors aren't getting prosecuted for properly treating their patients. It's interesting. I always think back to, I don't remember the doctor's name, but the doctor that told everybody that ulcers were caused by bacteria, right? He was put in jail. He served time. They'd not only pulled his medical license, he served time. And all the doctors made fun of him and said that was ridiculous and that you just have to go on a bland diet. And that was only in the, 1970s, 1980s, if not even more recent. And look at now, how is an ulcer treated? With antibiotics. So to me, that would be a great segue to open a conversation with the physician saying, hey, don't shut your eyes to this. You need to consider this is a real disease. This is a proven bacteria. Why isn't the rhesus monkey study known by every doctor? Why did my OBGYN not know that Lyme disease passes in utero? That was terrifying because I've had miscarriages and I'm okay sharing that. But now I wonder if that's why I had those miscarriages. It's because of the bacteria. It does go through the uterine wall. But so many doctors have so little information or misinformation. I had my general practitioner here that I was seeing at the time. I actually had looked up my symptoms, back when, and I'd forgotten about this. I just realized this, and I'd said, hey, it says I might have this Lyme disease, but I didn't know what it was. And he said, well, that's ridiculous. There is no Lyme in Colorado. And he was from Wisconsin. This is the irony of it, right? Which is a hot spot for Lyme. So this is when I really was tanking. And that's why I ended up going to see the doctor that I see today. That's how I ended up finding someone else because I knew I wasn't getting the help. And I was also having repeated sinus infections, which I now know is a Lyme symptom. And but basically, he gave me an ELISA test after I'd been on antibiotics for, 2 weeks. So of course it's going to come up negative, plus it has a 50% false negative run anyway. And it was never supposed to be a diagnostic test to begin with. So, just said, you don't have it. Never followed up, nothing. And the whole time I was tanking. He knows mommy's tired all the time. Or mommy's neck hurts all the time. And mommy's back hurts. And, the hardest thing is when I hug him goodnight, I have to tell him not to hug me around my neck too hard because it hurts me. And to tell your child to not hug you, that they can't hug you too tight because you hurt that's incredibly painful for a mother. Or he wants to say goodnight one more time.
It's a little joke with him. He'll say I didn't hug and kiss him, although I already had. And he wants me to come back and hug and kiss him again. And I'm too tired. Because for the last 2 hours, all I've been imagining is when I can go to sleep. Because the pain has worn me out. You know. So that's hard. But I always try to find a place in me and go back, because I know there'll be a day when he's old enough where he's not going to want that extra hug and kiss. So I'm going to take it while I can get it.
I think having a supportive family and a doctor that listens, it's kind of like Doctors Without Borders, like Doctors Without Egos. I have a doctor who'd fit in the Doctors Without Egos. He's brilliant, but he listens, and his goal is to treat the cause, not the symptom. That gives me hope. And the fact there's people like you, doing these kinds of measures. I mean, riding across the country is no small measure, and getting the word out there. I think that they will. I think that's going to help fund awareness and research, and possibly a vaccine, a permanent treatment for those of us where, it has gone past the initial stages and infiltrated the organs and the brain and the joints and whatnot. Just further education and research, and knowing that people are becoming more aware.